जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम to all the students. Hope all of you can listen to my voice clearly. So previously we just went through some of the introductory terms regarding chapter number 4, that is related to the basic concepts of cell, extracellular matrix and the neural elements. So in today's lecture we will go on to study the different types of cell junctions, and we will continue to uh, study different important topics that are included in this chapter. Okay, and this chapter, so we will start up with the intercellular junctions today. So this is the basic definition of the intercellular junction, that these are the specialized structures that provide adhesion as well as the different modes of communication between the cell and also between the cell and the extracellular matrix. So now we will study the different types of cell junctions that are present in between the cells and in between the cell and the extracellular matrix, and we will also discuss how they function differently and what are the different components of each cell junction. So this is the classification. The main classification includes the tight junctions, adhesive junctions, and the communicating junctions. Then we have two subdivisions of the adhesive junctions, that are cell to cell junctions and the cell to matrix junctions. And the cell to cell are further sub-classified as zonal adherence, macular adherence. Cell to matrix are classified as focal adhesion and hemidesmosomes. So we will study the different locations in which all these cell junctions are present and how they function in their specific location. So almost every cell junction will have these three basic components. कि मैंने आपको last lecture में भी इसका बताया था. I'm just going through this topic again because it is very important and students find it difficult to understand. So these are the three main components that you will be studying in almost every cell junction. That is the transmembranous protein, cytoplasmic adaptive protein, and then the cytoskeletal proteins. And then what we need to know is what is the specific location of these three components of the cell junctions around the cell. So if we focus on the name, first of all, we have the transmembrane proteins. So we will find these protein structures of the cell junctions in between the adjacent cell membranes. ठीक है, दो सेल अगर पड़े हुए हैं साइड टू साइड तो उनकी सेल मेम्ब्रेन है, और उनकी सेल मेम्ब्रेन के आउटर पार्ट के ऊपर जो सेल जंक्शन का कंपोनेंट होता है, दैट इज द ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन. ठीक है, दैट ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन दैट इज प्रेजेंट on the plasma membrane of the cells, that is connected to the cytoplasmic adapter proteins that are present in the cytoplasm of the cell. ठीक है, and those cytoplasmic adapter proteins, then they are linked to the cytoskeletal filaments. ठीक है, that is a structural framework that is present within the cell. So any type of movement or any type of signaling that is required, that is going to pass through these three different components, and these three different components are involved in providing different functions to the specific cell junctions. ठीक है? So now you focus on this image, you can see the two adjacent cells. ठीक है, उनकी एपिकल और बेसल मेम्ब्रेन सरफेस है, उनके इन बिटवीन आप देख सकते हो कि किस तरह से तीन टाइप्स के उसने जो सेल जंक्शंस दिखाए हुए हैं, ठीक है, टाइट जंक्शन, एडहेसिव जंक्शन एंड डेस्मोसोम्स, ठीक है। उसके बाद जो फोकल एडहेजन और हेमीडेस्मोसोम है, उसका हमने क्लासिफिकेशन में अभी पढ़ा था कि these are the two types that are uh, the source of adhesion between the cell and the extracellular matrix. So this is the location of the cell to matrix junctions, ठीक है। उसके अलावा बाकी जो जंक्शन है, उस जंक्शन को आप देख सकते हो कि वो आपको लेटरल सर्फ मेम्ब्रेन के ऊपर भी मिल जाते हैं, ठीक है। जो बाकी जो cell to matrix junction है, you can observe them on the basal membrane or the basal surface of the membrane of the cell, because they have to connect to the extracellular matrix. So you can also see the different molecular components of each of the junctions. उसमें आप देखें ये जो आपको different colors में नजर आ रहा है, black, blue और येलो कलर में, ठीक है, इन केस ऑफ टाइट, एडहेसिव एंड डेस्मोसोम्स, these are the three junctions. इसमें जो सेल मेम्ब्रेन के दरमियान में जो पोर्शन है, these are basically the transmembranous proteins, ठीक है। फिर आप उसमें डिफरेंट अरेंजमेंट देख सकते हो, प्लेट लाइक अरेंजमेंट है, ठीक है। दिस इज हाउ द साइटोप्लाज्मिक adapter proteins are connected to the transmembrane proteins, and then these cytoplasmic adapter proteins are connected to the cytoskeletal component within the cell. So these are the basic components of these different types of cell junctions. Now we will come and specifically discuss the structural and functional properties of each of the cell junction. So first of all, we come to the tight junctions, also known as the zonular adherence. So this word zonula, this is a scientific term that indicates that this type of cell junction is surrounding the cell membrane of the cells in a ring-like fashion or in a circular fashion. So this is what the zonula means, that the tight junctions, these are the junctions that encircle the cell membranes in a ring-like fashion. And then there are different types of proteins that you already know that are present in different type of cell junctions. So you have the transmembranous proteins. So the transmembrane proteins that is present in case of the tight junction, that is occludin and claudin proteins. So ये जो different types of आपको proteins बताए जा रहे हैं, ठीक है, इनमें फर्क क्या होता है? Basically the arrangement of the amino acid chain. इस बेसिस के ऊपर इनको डिफरेंट फैमिलीज में जो है वो डिवाइड किया जाता है. सो द ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन्स that are present in case of the tight junction, these are the occludins and the claudins. So all you need to remember in case of all of the cell junction is the name of the protein, transmembranous protein, cytoplasmic protein and the cytoskeletal protein, and then you need to know what is the specific function of that particular cell junction. Now the basic function of the tight junction is that they hold the cell together in a very tight position, and they actually prevent any sorts of the movement if there is any shock like condition observed by the tissues, ठीक है। उसके अलावा एक फंक्शन लिखा हुआ है कि it provides a transcellular and पैरासेलुलर ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड प्रिवेंट्स पैसिव फ्लो। पैसिव फ्लो होता है कि जब कोई भी एक मटेरियल एक दफ़ा पास कर गया तो इट कैन नॉट flow back into the opposite direction. So here is one of the diagrams of the tight junctions. Okay, you can see the chain like structure that is present in between the plasma membranes, and that is connected internally in the cell with the cytoplasmic adapter proteins that are mentioned as the regulatory proteins. And then those proteins are linked to the cytoskeletal proteins, that is the actin protein in case of tight junctions. So this is the chain like structure of the cell junctions that you can observe at molecular level. And then we discuss two main function. एक तो हमने पढ़ लिया कि it is holding the two adjacent cells in a tight position. दूसरा एक ये function होता है कि only this sort of movement is possible. ठीक है, इसको अगर आप ना भी mention करें तो क्योंकि आपकी बुक में mention नहीं है, ठीक है. So even if you just mention the two basic functions that it provides anchorage and stability, ठीक है, holds the cell together, तो ये भी functions काफ़ी है, ठीक है, because it is not going to allow any sort of vertical transport between the two adjacent cells. ठीक है, ये भी image आप देखें तो इसमें से आप कोई ट्रांसपोर्ट ऐसी नहीं देख रहे जो कि लेफ्ट और राइट पे जो सेल्स बने हुए हैं इनमें से होके दूसरे सेल में जा रही हो थ्रू द टाइट जंक्शंस, ठीक है. So the only type of transport that is possible is the paracellular and transcellular transport through these regions around the tight junctions. Paracellular transport क्या होती है? This is a pathway of transport from the apical membrane towards the basal or the basolateral membrane. ठीक है, basolateral या basal membrane वो होती है that is the membrane of the cell that is present adjacent to the extracellular matrix. Apical membrane होती है that is the membrane that is facing the lumen of the cell, ठीक है. तो जो basolateral membrane आपको दिखाई जा रही है इसके नीचे जो है आपकी extracellular matrix start हो जाती है, ठीक है जी. So this is how it is. Then we come to the adhesive junctions, जिसमें हमने पढ़ा था कि the adhesive junctions are further of two types, the zonular adherens and the macular adherens, ठीक है. अब zonular adherens की क्या पोजीशन होती है कि this type of junction it is present just below the tight junction and it will be encircling the cell membranes in the same fashion as in case of the tight junctions, ठीक है. Then I've mentioned the transmembrane proteins in case of zonular adherens, that is the cadherin protein. And as we know that signaling can occur through these type of cell junctions, so these types of cell junctions require presence of calcium ions that basically regulates or triggers the functioning of the transmembranous proteins with the cytoplasmic proteins and the cytoskeletal proteins, ठीक है. तो इसमें क्या होता है इन केस ऑफ द एडहेसिव जंक्शंस, जो आपके ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन होता है और जो साइटोप्लाज्मिक अडेप्टर प्रोटीन है और साइटोस्केलेटल प्रोटीन्स है, these basically join together to form a web like structure, ठीक है. And that web like structure actually works in association to trigger different cell signalings and any sorts of transports that can occur through this type of cell junction, ठीक है. So in this case cadherin is the transmembranous protein followed by a catenin that is the cytoplasmic adapter protein, ठीक है. So this is how a web like structure is formed between the transmembrane protein, cytoplasmic adapter proteins, and the cytoskeletal protein. Okay, then you come to the second type of cell to cell junction, that is known as the macular adherens, also known as the desmosomes. ठीक है, तो फर्स्ट टू जो हमने पढ़े थे टाइट जंक्शन और एडहेसिव जंक्शन में हमने पढ़ा जोनुला एडहेरेंस, उनमें हमने पढ़ा था कि those cell junctions are surrounding the cell membrane in a ring like fashion. ठीक है, in case of desmosomes or macular adherens, these are the cell junctions that surround the plasma membrane in a disc like fashion. So a disc like structure will be attached on the outer surface of the cell membrane that will be connected to the uh, cytoplasmic adapter protein and then to the cytoskeletal protein. So this is the basic structural difference between the tight and uh, zonular adherence with the macular adherence. So this macula basically means that this is a disc-like structure that will be present on the outer surface of the membrane. Then you can see over here that these transmembranous protein, they interact with the adjacent cells to form a dense line at the intercellular space. Okay? And these membrane proteins, these are connected to the cytoplasmic as well as the cytoskeletal proteins. ठीक है, इसमें उसने बताया होगा आपकी बुक में एक टर्म उसने यूज किया, दैट साइटोप्लाज्मिक प्रोटीन्स फॉर्म अ डेंस प्लाक लाइक स्ट्रक्चर. तो ये डेंस प्लाक लाइक, ठीक है, इस तरह का होता है. बेसिकली एक प्लेट या एक पैनल लाइक स्ट्रक्चर आपको नजर आएगा जो कि आप ये ब्लू से कलर में देख सकते हो. ठीक है, इसमें आप देख सकते हो कि किस तरह से जो ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेनस प्रोटीन हैं, दे आर कनेक्टेड थ्रू द साइटोप्लाज्मिक प्रोटीन, जो कि ये ब्लू से कलर में आपको नजर आ रहे हैं ना. पूरा एक प्लेट या पैनल लाइक स्ट्रक्चर है जिसकी एक साइड के ऊपर साइटोस्केलेटल प्रोटीन्स कनेक्ट हुए हुए हैं, दैट इज जो कि आपको ग्रे कलर में नजर आएगा. ठीक है, दूसरी साइड पे जो पर्पल और रेड कलर के हैं, दीज आर द प्रोटीन्स ऑफ द ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन. ठीक है, so these are the transmembranous proteins, and you can see the a panel like blue structure, that is the cytoplasmic adapter protein that is connected to the cytoskeletal proteins on the other side. So this is how a dense plaque like structure is going to appear, and this is the molecular configuration of the macular adherens. Then we have the last point, which is discussing if there is any sort of abnormality that occurs in relation to the cadherin, that is the transmembranous protein present on the desmosomes. ठीक है, so what is autoimmunity? Autoimmunity is a condition in which the own defense cells of the body, due to any sort of mutation in genes, what they do is that those cells start attacking the normal cell structures in your body. ठीक है, so these are the two conditions in which if there is autoimmunity of cadherin protein in desmosomes, it can lead to pemphigus vulgaris or epidermolysis bullosa. ठीक है, these are the two diseases with different sorts of complications. केस में क्या होता है, if there is any sort of autoimmunity, तो pemphigus vulgaris के केस में होगा कि you will observe oral ulcerations or oral bristles in the oral mucosa. ठीक है, epidermolysis bullosa में क्या होता है कि you can observe skin lesions or blisters on the surface of the skin. So any abnormality of the cadherin protein in desmosome can lead to these sorts of abnormalities. ठीक है, तो दिस इज ऑल यू हैव टू फोकस रिगार्डिंग दी सेल जंक्शंस। ठीक है, what are the three main components of the cell junctions? Transmembrane proteins, cytoskeletal and cytoplasmic adapter proteins. Also, what types of different proteins are present? ठीक है, only the family name of that protein, जैसे कि cadherin है, catenin protein है या actin protein है। ठीक है, so these names, and lastly is the function of their specific cell junction। ठीक है, so these are the terms that you need to focus on। इसमें पूरा पूरा जिसको कहते हैं ना कि आपको डिटेल में जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि किस तरह से जो है वो ये कंपोनेंट्स जो हैं साइटोप्लाज्मिक और साइटोस्केलेटल कंपोनेंट किस तरह से एसोसिएशन बनाते हैं। सो यू डोंट गो इनटू दोस डिटेल्स। ठीक है, सो if you revisit the classification section in your book, you can see these types of junctions that come under the heading of cell to matrix junctions। ठीक है, तो इसका मैंने इमेज भी आपको दिखाया था कि these are present on the basal membrane of the cells and they are connecting the cell structure with the extracellular matrix। ठीक है, उसके अलावा इसने बुक में इसके फंक्शन लिखे होंगे कि एक तो ये एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर मैट्रिक्स के साथ एसोसिएट करता है, दूसरा इट इज इन्वॉल्व्ड इन मैकेनो सिग्नलिंग इन माइग्रेशन ऑफ द सेल। ठीक है, तो जितनी भी सेल की मूवमेंट होनी होती है वो थ्रू सेल टू मैट्रिक्स जंक्शंस के थ्रू होती है। ठीक है, स्पेसिफिकली थ्रू द फोकल एडहेजन। So these are the junctions that help the cells in when it comes to migration। ठीक है, intercellular signaling and also in the help in adhesion of the cell to the extracellular matrix। So in the first point you can see the actin rich cytoskeleton linked to the extracellular matrix। So this is the cytoskeletal component in case of the focal adhesion, the actin protein। Then you can see a few proteins that have been mentioned over here। These are all the cytoplasmic adapter protein in case of the focal adhesion। ठीक है, इनमें से किसी एक का आप नाम याद रख लें वो काफ़ी है। And then you have integrin as the transmembrane protein of the in case of focal adhesion। So what is going to happen that the integrin these are going to bind to the extracellular matrix through the cytoplasmic adapter proteins। ठीक है, ये पूरा स्ट्रक्चर किस तरह से होता है। ठीक है, इफ यू लुक एट दिस पिक्चर ओवर हियर यू हैव ए एंड बी इमेज। ठीक है, इसमें अगर आप ए इमेज पे फोकस करें तो वो आपको बता रहा है कि पूरा एक जो सेल का स्ट्रक्चर है वो किस तरह से इट इज सिटिंग ऑन द एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर मैट्रिक्स। ठीक है, और एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर मैट्रिक्स की जिस लेयर के ऊपर ये बैठा होता है दैट इज नोन एज द बेसल लैमिना। So this is that basal lamina is basically the part of the extracellular matrix that provides the cell to float on the extracellular matrix। ठीक है, उसके बाद आप देख सकते हो there is a whole section that has been labeled as the focal adhesion। ठीक है, उसमें आप देखें कि स्ट्रेस फाइबर्स उसने दिखाए हुए हैं। स्ट्रेस फाइबर these are basically the intermediate the cytoskeletal component that is attached to the cytoplasmic adapter protein, and that cytoplasmic adapter protein is then connected to the surface molecules of the extracellular matrix। ठीक है, तो ये जो फोक लाइक एक्सटेंशंस हैं these are basically the what you can call the transmembrane proteins of the cells। ठीक है, and these are basically attached to the proteins that are present on the extracellular matrix। ठीक है, then you have a red cloud like structure that is the cytoplasmic protein that is attached to the blue cytoskeletal protein। सेम इज द केस दैट यू कैन ऑब्जर्व, ठीक है। तो ये जब आप स्ट्रक्चर सारा देखते हो ना, तो इसमें आप देखेंगे कि ये स्ट्रक्चर इंटेग्रिटी भी प्रोवाइड करेगा, ठीक है। एंड दिस इज हाउ द सेल दे कैन मूव ऑन द सरफेस ऑफ द एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर मैट्रिक्स, ठीक है। तो ये जो साइटोप्लाज्मिक ये जो ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन होता है, दिस एक्चुअली हेल्प्स इन द मूवमेंट ऑफ द सेल। और वो मूवमेंट ऑफ द सेल की सिग्नलिंग कहाँ से होगी? थ्रू द न्यूक्लियस। The signals are going to be perceived by the cytoskeletal proteins, ठीक है। And those cytoskeletal proteins will then perform the function of movement। जिस तरह मसल के केस में होता है ना कि एक्टिन मायोसिन फिलामेंट्स हैं, ठीक है, and they move in a specific position that cause the muscle movement। इसी तरह से यहाँ पे भी जो एक्टिन प्रोटीन होता है साइटोस्केलेटल फिलामेंट्स में, वो हेल्प करता है इन द मूवमेंट ऑफ द सेल। बी इमेज में आप देख सकते हो, उसने थोड़ा सा इसको एलेबोरेट करके दिखाया हुआ है। बीच में उसने एक ब्लैक सी लाइन दिखा दी है जस्ट टू शो यू द सेल मेम्ब्रेन। उसके बाहर वो दिखा रहा है इंटेग्रिटिन डायमर, ठीक है, इंटेग्रिन डायमर्स। सो दीज इंटेग्रिन डायमर्स आर बेसिकली द transmembranous proteins, and you can see the association of these transmembranous protein on the surface of the extracellular matrix, ठीक है। उसके बाद उसने ये पेक्सिलिन और टेलिन वैंकुलिन, these are all the cytoplasmic adapter proteins that are further connected to the cytoskeletal proteins। So this is the arrangement of all the arrangement of the different components of focal adhesion molecules, and this movement actually helps in migration or movement of the cell on the surface of extracellular matrix। So this is the basic concept in case of the focal adhesion. Then finally we come to the second type of cell to matrix junction, that are the hemidesmosomes. Now you can see what it is all about, that this is basically, in this case the cell is linked to the basal lamina and the extracellular matrix. So then you can see the integritin as the transmembranous protein, and bullous pemphigoid antigen 230 and plectin are the cytoplasmic adapter protein. So you can see the structure over here, and if you want to understand it, you can also see figure 4.8 in your book, ठीक है। उसमें उसने बड़ा क्लियरली बताया हुआ है, ठीक है। अगर आप नीचे से देखें तो तीन इसने मेम्ब्रेन्स दिखाई हुई हैं, लैमिना ल्यूसिडा, लैमिना डेंसा। दीज आर द कंपोनेंट ऑफ द बेसल लैमिना, ठीक है। उसके नीचे आ जाती है आपकी एक्स्ट्रासेलुलर मैट्रिक्स, ठीक हो गया। तो अगर आप इसके ऊपर देखें कि एक उसने स्ट्रक्चर लेबल किया हुआ है इंटरमीडिएट फिलामेंट सबसे ऊपर जो है, ठीक है। सो दिस इज द पार्ट ऑफ द सेल जंक्शन दैट विल बी प्रेजेंट विद इन अ सेल। उसके बाद आप देख सकते हो द हेमीडेस्मोसोम्स, जो बड़ा सा जो ओवल शेप येलो कलर की पिक्चर है, दिस इज द साइटोप्लाज्मिक अडेप्टर प्रोटीन्स। उसमें आप देख सकते हो इंटेग्रिन प्रोटीन, जिसको कि उसने अल्फा 6 बीटा 4 लेबल किया हुआ है। दीज आर द ट्रांसमेम्ब्रेन प्रोटीन्स। स्टार्ट हो जाती है, ठीक है। तो सेल मेम्ब्रेन के नीचे जो आपके स्ट्रक्चर्स आ रहे हैं, लेमिना ल्यूसिडा एंड लेमिना डेंसा, दीज आर द कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द बेसल लेमिना। उसके नीचे क्या आ जाएगी आपकी एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर। उसमें आप देख सकते हो कि एक तरफ तो इंटेग्रिन प्रोटीन्स जो हैं, दे आर आल्सो अटैच्ड टू द बेसल लेमिना, ठीक है। उसके साथ साथ आपको कोलेजन फाइबर्स भी नजर आएंगे, ठीक है। कोलेजन टाइप 4 specifically and collagen type 7 that also help in the anchorage of the cell with the extracellular matrix। So this is the arrangement in case of the hemidesmosomes. If you focus on your book, figure 4.8 A and B, तो उसमें B वाला जो इमेज है वो आपको बताएगा कि किस तरह से जो तीनों सेल जंक्शन के कंपोनेंट्स हैं they are linked together and then how they are associated with the basal lamina of the extracellular matrix. ठीक है. Then we have the final type of cell junctions that are the gap junctions. So it's a plaque-like or a panel-like position or region that is present on the cell membrane. These are basically small pores or channel-like structures present in the adjacent cell membrane, and the surface transmembranous protein that is present is known as the connection protein. And this connection protein basically acts like a channel, as it is going to allow aqueous as well as the ionic movement through its structure. So this is why it is known as a gap and also the communicating junction, because it is going to allow communication between the two adjacent cells. So any type of aqueous or ionic exchange is going to occur mostly through the gap junctions. So the most important protein related to it is the connection protein. So this is how it looks like, how the transmembranous proteins, they act as channels and they allow the movement of the aqueous solution as well as the ionic exchange. And you can also observe the closing and opening position of these cells. Then you can see some of the mutations that can or abnormalities that can occur in relation to the connection protein, and it can lead to these three types of abnormalities. One of them is the congenital cataract. इसमें क्या होता है कि that the individual cannot see or does not has a clear vision, blur vision होता है क्योंकि a white cloud like structure can be seen on the surface of eye of such individual. So this is known as the congenital cataract. Then another abnormality that can occur is the Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. This is basically a disease of the peripheral nervous system. That is a system that connects the brain and the spinal cord. So if there is any sort of mutation, this can lead to dysfunctioning of the signals between the brain and the spinal cord, and this can also cause atrophy of your muscles of your extremities. Okay, so these are some of the features of the Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, that is a disease of the peripheral nervous system. Then lastly you have the oculodento digital dysplasia. So you will observe some craniofacial abnormalities uh, in this case, and also some abnormality of your digits or the fingers. The individual may have an extra digit or fused digit. So these are some of the features that you can observe in oculodento digital dysplasia. Then we have the another topic that is known as the epithelium connective tissue interface. ठीक है, तो अभी तक जो हमने पढ़ा था सेल जंक्शंस, वो बेसिकली हमने पढ़ा था कि बेसिकली क्या होता है कि जो एपिथेलियल सेल्स हैं उनके दरमियान जो एसोसिएटिंग स्ट्रक्चर हैं, दोज आर द सेल जंक्शंस. ठीक है, अब एपिथेलियम के नीचे एक लेयर होती है, दैट इज द लेयर ऑफ द कनेक्टिव टिश्यू दैट इज ज्वाइनिंग द structure that is present below the connective tissue with the epithelium. ठीक है? So how this epithelium connective tissue interface is going to look like? So we can see that basal lamina is the interface that separates the epithelium from the connective tissue. तो अभी जो हमने बेसिकली पढ़ा था ना हेमिडेस्मोसोम्स, वो भी हमने क्या पढ़ा था कि those are the cell junctions that are associating the basal lamina with the cells. ठीक है? तो वो सेल्स जब या एपिथेलियम सरफेस जो होता है वो आपकी एक ही बात होती है. ठीक है? सो द एपिथेलियम दैट इज मेड अप ऑफ डिफरेंट सेल्स, उसके नीचे आपकी क्या आ जाएगी, बेसल लेमिना, जिसके ऊपर आपके एपिथेलियल सेल रिजाइड करते हैं, और उसके नीचे जो है आपकी एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर कनेक्टिव टिश्यू मैट्रिक्स एंड द कनेक्टिव टिश्यू लेयर आ जाती है. So this is how it is, and then we have it is an organized extracellular matrix adjacent to the epithelium. ठीक है, जिसकी कि फर्दर मैंने आपको टू टाइप्स ऑलरेडी बता दिए हैं, द लेमिना ल्यूसिडा एंड द लेमिना डेंसा. दीज आर द लेयर्स ऑफ द और द कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द बेसल लेमिना. ठीक है. Then you have another structure that is the lamina reticularis. This is basically the area where the collagen fibers, they are connecting the connective tissue layer with the basal lamina. And these are also some of the components that you can observe in case of epithelial connective tissue interface. This is an image which we can see. ठीक है. ऊपर वाला अगर आप इमेज देखो, इसको किसने एपिथेलियल सेल लेबल किया हुआ. ठीक है. एपिथेलियल जो एडजेसेंट दो सेल्स हैं उनके दरमियान आप देखोगे कुछ ब्लैक सी स्ट्रक्चर्स नजर आ रहे हैं. दीज आर द सेल जंक्शंस. कौन कौन से हो सकते हैं? ये टाइट जंक्शन, एडहेसिव जंक्शन एंड द डेस्मोसोम्स. फिर कुछ जंक्शंस वो आपको दिखा रहा है between the connective tissue and the epithelial cell. These are either the focal adhesion junctions or the hemidesmosomes. उस sections को इसने magnify करके आपको नीचे वाले image में दिखाया हुआ है कि किस तरह से आपके जो hemidesmosomes हैं वो कहाँ पे जा रहे हैं, in the region of basement membrane or the basal lamina, जिसके के दो components होते हैं. ठीक है. Lamina lucida and the lamina densa. ठीक हो गया. उसके नीचे आप देख रहे हो कि फिर जो नीचे लेयर आती है वो होती है आपकी कनेक्टिव टिश्यू की, दैट कंसिस्ट्स ऑफ अ गुड नंबर ऑफ कोलेजन fibers. So these fiber layer, these are basically type 4 collagen fibers that are providing anchorage capability to the connective tissue with the basal membrane. ठीक है. So I hope you can understand this diagram. If you have any questions regarding this, you can ask me so that we can move to the next topic. Any questions that you have till now? That is a disease that is associated with your peripheral nervous system. ठीक है. अगर आपने अपने एनाटमी में, न्यूरो एनाटमी में या फिजियोलॉजी में टॉपिक पढ़ा होगा ना, पेरिफेरल नर्वस सिस्टम, तो आपको पता होगा दैट इट इज अ सिस्टम दैट इज कनेक्टिंग योर ब्रेन एंड स्पाइनल कॉर्ड. सो इन स्ट्रक्चर से जितने भी एसोसिएटेड फंक्शंस होते हैं ना, अगर आपको चारकोट मेरिटोथ डिजीज है तो इट इज गोइंग टू कॉज dysfunctioning or abnormality of your peripheral nervous system. ठीक है. और peripheral nervous system से related आपके बॉडी के जितने ही functions हैं वो affect हो जाते हैं. And it also causes the atrophy of your muscles. That is the degeneration of the muscles of your body. So this is what it is all about. So this arrangement of the epithelial connective tissue interface is very important, and this is how you need to remember it. Okay. So next we move on to the extracellular matrix. And now we will study in detail what are the different components that are present in the surrounding of the cell. अभी तक हमने क्या पढ़ा है कि सेल, उसके अंदर के components, cell के adjacent structures that are connecting the two adjacent cells, and also the cell to the extracellular matrix. Now we will study what sort of biochemistry or biochemical reactions are going on around the cells. So we have a matrix of different components that is known as the extracellular matrix, and this is how we can define the extracellular matrix, that it is a network of macromolecules that are going to provide structural and biochemical support to the surrounding area of the cell. ठीक है, तो उसके अलावा आप जो कौन कौन से ये मैक्रोमोलिक्यूल्स होते हैं, ठीक है, this is how the environment outside the cell membrane looks like. ठीक है, so you can see the collagen fibers plus proteoglycans and elastin as one of the very main components of the extracellular matrix. ठीक हो गया. Then we have another very important component of the extracellular matrix, that are the fibroblasts. And this is how we can define them, that these are the cells or biological cells that originate from the mesenchymal cells that are involved in the synthesis of the extracellular matrix. Okay? And then you can see the morphology of those cells. These are flat, spindle shaped, most abundant in all the connective tissues. ठीक है, तो आप अपने जितने भी हार्ड एंड सॉफ्ट टिश्यूज भी पढ़ोगे, उसमें जितने भी कनेक्टिव टिश्यूज हैं, उसमें फाइब्रोब्लास्ट की जो अमाउंट होती है, we will always study that those tissues have predominant fibroblast present. So these are some of the functions. In the third point, you can see that they have the ability to contract, provide motility during remodeling, repair, and tissue formation. And the association that they form with the extracellular matrix is known as the fibronexus. This is how the active and passive form of fibroblasts they look like. ये जो A figure है, this is the fibroblast at rest stage, जिसमें कि आपको ये flat spindle shape नजर आएंगे. Once they are active in secreting the organic matrix or formation of any structure, they become star shaped. So this is how the activated fibroblasts are going to appear at cellular level. And these are the different components that fibroblasts are involved in secreting. और यही सारे जो components हैं, these are the components of the extracellular matrix. ठीक है? So if you are asked about the secretory products of fibroblasts, तो obviously आप extracellular matrix के सारे components लिख सकते हो, the collagen, elastin, proteoglycans, ठीक है, cytokines, growth factors, glycoproteins. ठीक है, and even if you are, and when you are asked about the components of ECM, same are the components that you can write down. ठीक है, तो ये सारे components, these are the components of the extracellular matrix that is secreted by the fibroblasts. Then we come to one of the very important type of, or the important components of the extracellular matrix, that is collagen. And you can see that is the most abundant proteins present in all the connective tissues, that is bone, muscle, skin, and tendons. And total 27 types of them are present, but you only need to remember a few of those. Again, last point, you can see primarily produced by mesenchymal cells and its derivatives. ठीक है, तो mesenchymal cells का derivative कौन होता है? It is the fibroblast cells, and those cells are involved in secretion of the collagen. So this is the basic introduction of the collagen, and then we will study its formation and different types in our next lecture. So any question that you have regarding the intercellular junctions and the all that we have studied today, you can ask me right now. Any questions? सो रहे हैं आज अक्सर स्टूडेंट्स. Most of you are समझ सारी आ रही है इसकी जो मैंने पढ़ाया? चलें ठीक है. So I hope now most of you चलें ठीक है. So गाइडलाइन आपने ही याद रखनी है. Whatever I have discussed बहुत ज़्यादा डिटेल में जाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. Only focus on the components and the structural components and the functions of whatever we are going to study in this chapter. So now you can take a break for about 5 to 10 minutes because you have another oral bio lecture of tooth development from 1 to 2 from Dr. Sana.